Hi guys, you're welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I'll be teaching us how you can sew these bodies with an illusion. In my previous class I showed us how to cut it. So just before we jump into the tutorial, I would like us to follow us on all our social media handles, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Pinterest. Just search for Wear Lala. We also have a sewing group on Facebook, Cut and Sew by Wear Lala. So let's get started. Now this is my pattern. Okay, so the center piece is the insert or the illusion, and I'm using the same fabric, which is the lace fabric, but I won't be lining it. Okay, you can use two for that too. Then this is the center piece, the lace, the lining, and the pad. Okay, and then the side piece, I also have the lace, the lining, and my pad. So for lace dresses, I always do like a double lining. So the first lining is just to give it to cover up the transparent parts. Okay, so I'll be joining like what I've done on this other side here. So I'll be joining the two center piece together aside the piece that I'll be using as the insert. Okay, so when you're sewing lace fabric, you need to work with pins. Actually, you should work with pins whenever you're embarking on any sewing projects. Okay, it eliminates any form of error, okay, to the barest minimum. So I'll be sewing with 1/2 inch seam allowance. So as you sew, you can take off the pins so that you don't damage your foot. So your seam allowance is 1/2 inch. For my pad, I used the medium size wording. Okay, so I'm just sewing with 1/2 inch. So just ignore the pencil on my table. That's my daughter's handwork. Alright, so I'm done sewing. Okay, and then you should notch the seam allowance. Okay, so and I've gone to iron. So this is one side of the bodies on the other side. Okay, then you should iron, and I have my corresponding lining too. This is not the lining. I used satin fabric. For the one under the lace, I used taffeta. I didn't want it to be too heavy. Okay, so this is what I'm using for my insert. Some people use tulle. Some people use the color of their skin tone as a tool, but for this design I'm using the lace. Okay, now before you want to start sewing, when cutting, there's always tendency for probably the lining to be longer than the lace itself. You can see that excess there, so I'll just trim it off. You should look out for that when you're sewing. So after trimming off the excess, this is how you are going to place the insert, like so. So I'm going to turn it right side facing right side, and then you must pin. Pinning is not an option, it's a must. Else by the time you get to the end there, you'll find out that either the insert is longer or the bodice is longer. That's the side. So that's because while sewing, one piece of the fabric tends to stretch, so you have to pin. So now I'm going to sew along that curve with 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, it's a curve, so you should sew gently and be careful not to have pleats. Okay, so if this is the first time, well, you might have tiny pleats here and there because it's your first time, or probably you're not yet perfect sewing on the curve. Don't worry, practice makes perfect. Okay, so I'm just pinning, okay, the second lining now with my fabric. So I'm just going to sew with 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm sewing together the lining and the main fabric. Okay, so don't forget 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then as you sew, you should take off your pins. And then you should also be mindful of the insert underneath. The insert is between the fabric and the lining, so you should check occasionally to be sure that the insert is not caught in between the seam allowance. Okay, so I'm just sewing and checking. What I'm doing basically is I'm making sure that I don't have any form of pleats there. Okay, so this is it. Then you have to create notches, okay, so that because of that curve, by the time you want to flip over to the right side, you know, the lining will just pull gently, you know, without any obstruction. So the notching is very important. So this is it here. Okay, now let me just show us what we have done so far. This is how it's going to look like. Can you see? All nice and clean, so neat, but you still need to secure your lining down so that it's not sticking out. Okay, so now I'm going to be sewing my seam allowance to the lining. Just watch carefully. Okay, so this is my seam allowance. Okay, so I will be sewing it to my lining, and then you should, you know, move the insert away from the sewing line so that you don't stitch the insert down. Okay, it's a very easy process. Okay, so for starters, you can just get probably pieces of fabric just to try it like 2 or 3 times before you go ahead and attempt it on your dress. Yeah, so that you don't ruin your garments. So I'm just top stitching, that is sewing my seam allowance to the lining. And because it's a curve, you also need to fold the seam allowance along that curve. Okay, all right, I'm done sewing. So one of the major importance of top stitching is it keeps your lining in place. Even before ironing, the lining will stay in place. Can you see that? I don't need to start pushing my lining inwards. I mean around the insert. Okay, so this is it. Now to fix the second side, it's very simple, like very easy. Okay, so I'm going to get the second front piece there. Then I'll turn the insert up like so, right side facing the right side of the second side piece, and I'll also pin the insert round the style line and then place my lining on it like this, and I'll sew round. And make sure you pin, please make sure you pin. So I'm done sewing. Now I'll take this to my ironing table and give it a very good press. Okay, and then I'll just show the outcome. Okay, so this is it here. Okay, so let me just do that. Now after ironing, this is what it looks like. But you know, a table is not a 3-dimensional object. So now the lace is looking sort of folded. Now I'll place it on the mannequin for us to have a better view of what we've done. So this is what it looks like. Okay, trust me. Now let me ask us, which one do you prefer to use? Would you prefer to use veil net or to use the main lace of the fabric? I think for me, I prefer the lace. It looks classy and nice. So thank you so much for watching. Bye.